what is going on in Israel is a prophetic red flag. A city at the center of history, a place where prophecy has unfolded for thousands of years. And now, something strange is happening in Jerusalem, a shift that is impossible to ignore. Preparations are underway. But for what? The answer to this question is more shocking than anyone could have predicted. Why is Jerusalem suddenly getting ready for the second coming? Why now? What do they know that the rest of the world doesn't? What cryptic message did the Bible reveal that's driving Jerusalem's urgency? And most importantly, could this mean Jesus is returning soon? On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two. The prophecy is clear. Jerusalem is preparing, and what comes next will change the world forever. But will the world be ready for what's about to unfold, or is the countdown already past the point of no return? For centuries, believers have watched for 4 major signs that would mark the approach of the second coming, and right now, all 4 are happening. Which of these 4 signs is the most terrifying, and why are experts saying it's already too late to stop it? One of these signs is more urgent than the others because it may already be too late to stop it. The first sign: Israel has returned. When I first started researching this, I came across something that absolutely stunned me. The Bible prophesied that before Jesus returns, Israel would be reborn as a nation. Now, most people know about Israel becoming a nation in 1948, but here's what they don't know. It's what happened after Israel's rebirth that reveals the most disturbing truth of all. Let me take you back to a prophecy that was given over 2,500 years ago, a prophecy that many scholars thought was impossible to fulfill. But in our time, in our generation, it came true in the most remarkable way. Isaiah 66 verse 8 says, "Who has heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall the earth be made to give birth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once?" On May 14th, 1948, that exact prophecy was fulfilled. Israel was reborn in a single day. But here's what most people don't know about that day. There was a celestial event on that very day in 1948 that signaled God's hand in Israel's return. It wasn't just a coincidence. It was an undeniable sign that something bigger was at play. Think about this. A nation that had been scattered for nearly 2,000 years came back to life in 24 hours. After the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD, the Jewish people were scattered across the world. But now, here's what's fascinating and a little unsettling. Something is pulling them back. There's an unseen force gathering them at an unprecedented speed. They were exiled from their land. They were persecuted in foreign nations. Many believed Israel would never exist again. But God had other plans. Here's something that will give you chills. There was divine intervention during World War II that forced the world to give Israel back its land against all odds. And I believe a similar crisis could be the final trigger for what happens next. In the ashes of World War II, against every political and historical precedent, a miracle happened. The Jewish people returned home. In 1947, the United Nations voted to create a Jewish state. In 1948, Israel was reborn. The exact prophecy written in the Bible came true in our lifetime. But here's the question that's been bothering me. What if this was only the beginning? What if the next step has already begun and we're just now starting to see it? Why is Israel's return so critically important? Because Jesus himself said that Israel's return would be the first major sign before his second coming. Matthew 24, verses 32 to 33 tells us, "Now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near, at the doors." Israel is the fig tree. Its rebirth was the first sign. But here's what's really remarkable and a little terrifying. There's an acceleration in nature that's mirroring this prophecy right now. Prophecy is accelerating at a speed no one predicted, leading some to believe the countdown has already begun. The Bible makes it absolutely clear Israel is at the center of God's final plan. But here's what's keeping me up at night. Has Israel just set something in motion that cannot be undone? Some believe this one move could trigger a prophetic domino effect, leading to an event that cannot be stopped. Jerusalem will be the focal point of world events. All nations will be drawn into conflict over this tiny piece of land. Zechariah 12:2-3 says, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, and in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people." Do you see it happening today? Look around. Nations are fighting over Jerusalem right now. Here's what's really unsettling. The next conflict could be the spark that ignites a war unlike anything we've ever seen before. The world is watching Israel more than ever before, and biblical prophecy is unfolding before our very eyes at lightning speed. Since Israel's rebirth, prophecy has been moving at an unstoppable pace. In 1967, Israel recaptures Jerusalem for the first time in nearly 2,000 years. In 1995, Jerusalem is declared the eternal capital of Israel. In 2018, the U.S. officially recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Every major global power is now focused on Israel. Why? There's an explosive event about to erupt in Israel that could pull every nation into a war no one can escape. And it could be the final piece that sets prophecy into full motion. The signs are here. Israel is back. Jerusalem is preparing. But here's what's really concerning. There's a ticking clock in Jerusalem streets that's counting down to this war. There's one decision that could accelerate everything, and the moment it's made, the prophecy will be unstoppable. Time is running out. How many days do we have left before Jerusalem's next move triggers the unstoppable countdown to the end? Jesus is coming back. Jerusalem is getting ready. Here's the final question I want to leave you with before we move to the second sign. If we really are on the edge of prophecy, then the question isn't whether it will happen. The question is whether you are prepared for it. Are you ready? Ezekiel saw it in a vision thousands of years ago. A people scattered, lifeless, forgotten. A people who thought hope was lost. But then God breathed life into them. He brought them home. And Israel rose from the ashes. There was a divine breath that was felt in Jerusalem the night Israel rose again. From the valley of dry bones to a living, breathing nation, stronger than ever before. The second sign, the third temple preparations, are underway. Now, here's where things get really intense. What I'm about to share with you next completely blew my mind when I first discovered it. For thousands of years, think about this, thousands of years, the Jewish people have been waiting for one single moment: the rebuilding of the Holy Temple, this isn't just some modern idea. This is a prophecy that was spoken of in the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation, and in the words of Jesus himself. And here's what's absolutely stunning. Preparations are already happening right now. Let me take you to Daniel 9:27, because this is where everything starts to make sense. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. Daniel's prophecy speaks of a future world leader who will make a 7-year peace agreement. But here's the chilling part. Halfway through, he will stop the temple sacrifices, which means the temple must exist for this to happen. The pieces are already in place. One decision could change everything overnight. 2 Thessalonians 2:4 tells us, "He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God." This passage describes a future event where the Antichrist will stand in the temple and declare himself as God. But here's the question that's been haunting biblical scholars. How can this happen if there is no temple? The third temple must be built. But will its construction spark the ultimate showdown between nations? Here's what's absolutely mind-blowing. Plans for that temple are already underway right now. Let me tell you about something that will absolutely amaze you. There's an organization in Jerusalem called the Temple Institute, and they have one singular goal: to rebuild the Holy Temple. Here's what they've already accomplished, and this is going to shock you. They've created the sacred golden menorah. They've reconstructed the high priest's garments. They've forged the silver trumpets and temple vessels. The temple is already designed. The priests are already trained. All they need is permission to build. Now here's where this gets absolutely fascinating. Before the temple can be built, it must first be purified. And according to Numbers 19, purification requires one very specific thing: the ashes of a perfect red heifer. Numbers 19:2 says, "This is the ordinance of the law which the Lord has commanded, saying, Speak to the children of Israel that they bring you a red heifer without blemish, in which there is no defect and on which a yoke has never come." For over 2,000 years, the Jewish people have searched for a red heifer that meets these exact requirements. And in 2022, something incredible happened that sent shockwaves through the religious world. 5 pure red heifers arrived in Israel from the United States. Here's the biggest question that's been dividing scholars and religious leaders. Where will the third temple be built? Explosive evidence just surfaced that could rewrite everything we know about the Temple Mount's true location. Some believe it will be built right next to the Dome of the Rock. Others believe the entire Temple Mount must be cleared first. And some even suggest the true location of the Holy of Holies is elsewhere entirely. One thing is absolutely clear: Jewish leaders are serious. They believe the temple will be built soon, and they are making preparations for it right now. Why is this such a critical sign of Jesus' return? Let me show you what Jesus himself said about this. Matthew 24:15 tells us, "So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand." There's a grotesque act that the Antichrist will perform there that will scar the world forever. It's a prophecy so horrifying, its full meaning has been feared for centuries. Jesus himself warned that in the last days there would be a third temple and that the Antichrist would stand in it and defile it. Here's what's really chilling. There's a defilement from history that the Antichrist is planning to repeat. The third temple is not just a Jewish prophecy. It's a countdown. And that countdown is accelerating at an unprecedented pace. It is a sign of the end times. The signs are here, and every new development is pushing us closer to the inevitable. The temple is coming, and time is running out. How close are we to the moment the third temple's first stone is laid, and what catastrophe will it unleash? Matthew 24:42 warns us, "Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming." There's an unstoppable disaster that will follow that first stone's placement. The moment that stone is laid, everything changes. Jesus is coming back. Jerusalem is getting ready. But as incredible as the third temple preparations are, there's a fourth sign that's happening simultaneously that might be even more alarming. And when you see how these signs are interconnecting, you're going to understand why some people believe we're living in the final chapter of human history. The fourth sign: the nations are turning against Jerusalem. The fourth sign is something I've been tracking closely in current events, and it's absolutely chilling how precisely it's matching biblical prophecy. The Bible warned us that in the last days, the whole world will turn against Jerusalem. Does this sound familiar to you? Zechariah 12 tells us exactly what's going to happen. On that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock. All who try to move it will injure themselves. There's a fatal wound that will strike the first nation to challenge this rock. This prophecy is happening right now, before our very eyes. The United Nations is discussing control over Jerusalem. Nations around the world are calling for a divided Israel. And global pressure is increasing every single day. Jerusalem has always been at the center of prophecy. But for the first time in history, the entire world is watching and waiting for the next move. Right now, world leaders are pushing for what they call the two-state solution. It's a plan that would divide Jerusalem, giving part of it to another nation. A plan that would take the holiest city in the world and place it under international control. But the Bible is crystal clear. Jerusalem is God's city. And every nation that tries to divide it will face judgment. There's a horrifying punishment that awaits the nations that defy God's city, and it could strike sooner than anyone expects. Joel 3:2 says, "I will gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. There I will put them on trial for what they did to my inheritance, Israel, because they scattered my people among the nations and divided up my land." God himself warned that dividing his land would bring judgment. And yet, the world is doing it anyway. Look at what's happening around the world right now. Nations that once supported Israel are now turning away. Governments are condemning Israel's right to its own land. Global superpowers are aligning against Jerusalem. Every major world organization is watching Jerusalem. Every powerful leader has an opinion about what should happen to the holy city, and all of it is pointing toward the fulfillment of prophecy. There is one place in Jerusalem that has caused more conflict than anywhere else on earth: the Temple Mount. It's the holiest site in Judaism, the place where the first and second temples once stood, and the location of a future third temple. The Jewish people long for the day when they can rebuild the Holy Temple, but here's the problem. Right now, they are not allowed to pray on the Temple Mount. It is controlled by Islamic authorities. And the battle for this one piece of land is leading the world toward a massive conflict. Is there an ancient curse tied to the Temple Mount that's about to awaken and drag the world into war? The Bible says Jerusalem will be the trigger for a coming global war. And we are already seeing it unfold. Zechariah 14:2 says, "I will gather all the nations to Jerusalem to fight against it. The city will be captured." The world will gather against Jerusalem. The final war will center on this city. And when the nations rise against it, Jesus himself will return. While the world plots against Jerusalem, the city is being prepared, the people are returning, and the prophecies are aligning. The world may think it is in control, but God already wrote the final chapter, and that final chapter is about to begin. Will humanity's final attempts to resist prophecy actually lead to its downfall? Now, I've shown you the first two signs, but here's the biggest prophecy of all, and this is where everything comes together. It's about exactly where Jesus will return. Zechariah 14 verse 4 tells us, "On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two." When Jesus returns, he will stand on this very mountain. But here's what's absolutely mind-blowing and a little unsettling. There's strange activity happening on the Mount of Olives right now that's signaling Jesus' feet are about to touch down. And when he does, the earth itself will split. It will be an unmistakable sign that the king has returned. Now here's where science meets prophecy in a way that gave me chills when I first discovered it. Science has confirmed that a fault line runs directly beneath the Mount of Olives. If a major earthquake happened, the mountain would literally split in two, exactly like the Bible says it will. Matthew 24:42 says, "Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming." Jesus is coming back. Jerusalem is getting ready. But when the time comes, will the world recognize the signs or be caught completely off guard? Let me share something with you that completely shifted my understanding of how reliable biblical prophecy really is. The Bible is a history book like no other. You won't find a book like this in any public library. It tells the story of Earth from the very beginning to the very end. No other history book covers so much ground. One reason is that no human was there at the beginning to see it happen and write it down. That means no person can tell the full story of how our world started. But here's what makes us special. We are the only people who know how everything will end. God didn't tell his followers about the future just to satisfy their curiosity. He told them so they would be ready when it happened. He didn't want them to be surprised or confused. Be thankful that Jesus was honest in telling us what's coming. Now, people constantly ask me, are we in the end times? But here's something that might surprise you. The Bible talks about the last days, and those last days started a long time ago, 2,000 years ago, in fact. The last days began at Pentecost. Every Christian generation should live ready for the Lord's return. From start to finish, the Bible is a book of prophecy, though some books focus on it more than others. But here's what's incredible. Out of those 735 prophecies, 596 have already come true, exactly as the Bible said they would. That means 81% of all Bible prophecies have already happened. Some of these prophecies were written hundreds of years before they came true. If 81% has happened already, it's not hard to believe that the last 19% will also come true. That's a success rate that would make any statistician's jaw drop. The Bible has been 100% right about every prophecy that could have been fulfilled by now. Most of the remaining prophecies are about Jesus' return and what happens after that. So here's the question that's been haunting me. How many prophecies still need to happen before Jesus comes back? The answer is about 20. We are watching for those to come true first before we look for the Lord's return. Jesus told us to watch and pray. But what exactly are we watching for? We can't just stand still and stare at the sky, waiting for him to show up. That's not what he meant. He meant we should pay attention to what's happening in the world and look for the signs he gave us to help us get ready. These signals are the signs we need to understand Jesus' clear instructions. So let me take you to Matthew chapter 24, where the disciples asked him the exact question you're probably thinking right now. What will be the signs of your return? What should we do if we don't know when it's going to happen? Jesus gave them a clear and simple answer. We can thank God that He made it so easy to understand. In the book of Revelation, He gives a much longer and more detailed answer. But here, He lists the signs that will come before His return in a way that anyone can grasp. The disciples came to Jesus privately while He was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the same mountain we just talked about. And here's exactly what Jesus told them and what He's telling us today. Don't let anyone mislead you, for many will come in my name claiming I am the Messiah. They will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and threats of wars, but don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Nation will go to war against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world, but all this is only the first of the birth pains, with more to come. But that's just the beginning. Jesus continued, "Then you will be arrested, persecuted, and killed. You will be hated all over the world because you are my followers. And many will turn away from me and betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and will deceive many people. Sin will be rampant everywhere, and the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And the good news about the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole world so that all nations will hear it, and then the end will come." And then Jesus gave them the most chilling warning of all. "The day is coming when you will see what Daniel the prophet spoke about, the sacrilegious object that causes desecration standing in the holy place." And here's what's remarkable. Jesus told the reader to pay attention to this specific sign. "Then those in Judea must flee to the hills. A person out on the deck of a roof must not go down into the house to pack. A person out in the field must not return even to get a coat." How terrible it will be for pregnant women and for nursing mothers in those days. And pray that your flight will not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For there will be greater anguish than at any time since the world began, and it will never be so great again. In fact, unless that time of calamity is shortened, not a single person will survive, but it will be shortened for the sake of God's chosen ones. But Jesus wasn't finished. He continued with the most dramatic description of all. "Immediately after the anguish of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will give no light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. And then at last, the sign that the Son of Man is coming will appear in the heavens, and there will be deep mourning among all the peoples of the earth. And they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And He will send out His angels with the mighty blast of a trumpet. And they will gather His chosen ones from all over the world, from the farthest ends of the earth and heaven." Now, in that passage from Matthew 24, Jesus gave 4 crystal clear signs of His return. Here's what I discovered when I studied this intensively. One of those signs is already happening right now, but the other 3 have not yet come. That's exactly why I can say with confidence, we are in the beginning of the end times. So what are these 4 signs Jesus told us about? Let me break them down for you. The first sign. The first sign is disasters happening all around the world. Jesus talks about specific things like wars, famines, and earthquakes. Now, these things have been happening for over 2,000 years, but here's what's different now. They're getting worse at an unprecedented rate. So we are already seeing this first sign manifesting: wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, and famines occurring with increasing frequency and intensity. Jesus warns us repeatedly, don't be deceived. He says this over and over again because as the end gets closer, people will try to trick us both inside and outside the church. One of the biggest dangers comes from false Christs, false messiahs. These are people who pretend to be the savior and use the chaos of natural disasters to fool others. We've seen well-known examples of people who tricked others into following them to the desert only for things to end in complete disaster. There are many false Christs and false saviors today who claim they can save us from all our troubles. Here's what's unsettling. The worse things get, the more false saviors will appear. But Jesus tells us something crucial. Don't panic. Don't be afraid when you hear about another war, another disaster, or another famine. He said something absolutely amazing that completely changed my perspective on world events. These painful things happening around us, they are not the pains of death, they are birth pains. So when you hear about disasters in the news, remember that these pains mean something new is about to be born. This should fundamentally change how we think. We know where the world is heading. We should not be scared or upset, not as worried as the rest of the world. The disasters we see are like the pain a mother feels before she gives birth. A new world is coming. Because of this understanding, we are different. We care deeply about those who suffer and we should help them, but in our hearts, we do not live in fear. Instead, we have hope. We are waiting for the birth of something new. That's why we are not filled with sadness when we see problems in the world. In simple terms, Jesus would tell us today, do not panic. Do not be afraid. Instead, be glad and say, these are signs that something new is coming. The second sign. Now, the second sign of his coming is not happening in the world, it's happening in the church. World disasters are the first sign, but the church itself is the second sign of his coming. Just like Jesus divided the first sign into three parts: wars, earthquakes, and famines, he also divided this second sign into three parts, all of which happen inside the church. The first part is persecution. We will be hated in every nation. The second part of this sign is that the church will become much smaller. Most people's love for God will grow cold. When the church faces hard times, many people who only say they are Christians but do not truly believe will leave. Because of worldwide persecution, their love will grow cold.